All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Builder Chat on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon in sunny Florida. My name is Fred Guitton, Chief Revenue Officer at Red Team Software. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about, choosing the right technology in construction and what does that look like. Construction is just one of those spaces where there's so much going on right now, especially in technology adoption. And so a little bit about Red Team. We're a complete construction platform. We help our companies with, business dev, project management, field management, GAN scheduling, construction financials. So it's a very complete platform. This is not meant to be an advertising. Just want to make you aware of what we do. Cloud-based platform, which we kind of say like, of course it's cloud-based, but in reality, there's still a lot of solutions are not cloud-based out there. So when people think about construction workflows, we think about this beautiful diagram, right? We know everything is organized and it's really tight, and the subs send us the right RFI at the right time and we respond in 2 days, and it's all nice and neat. And then once you actually dig into it, the reality of workflows is kind of more of a blurry understanding. There's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff all the time. And if you actually sit in a room and you actually ask the project manager, the estimator, the accountant, the project accountant, the field guys to start writing up all their workflows and try to make this into a single diagram, most people stop and go, wow, we do a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of room for error here. And there's a lot of risk. And so how do we organize all of this? And that's when we say, let's find technology. Let's find this silver bullet that's going to solve everything. And so today, I want to introduce you to our guest speaker, Jay Snyder from FMI. Jay spends his days and nights, I say nights because I'm pretty sure you're kind of like me, work late hours, kind of digging into what the workflows and what technology is out there and what are the concerns of construction companies. And so I'll let Jay introduce himself and we'll speak a little bit about FMI and then get into the subject matter we have today.
Yeah, it's great, Fred. Thank you. And always glad to do stuff with you. This is my first time on Builder Chat with you, so looking forward to more down the road, and really glad to be here. So at FMI, I lead the technology and innovation practice, one of the newer parts of the firm. If you're not familiar with FMI, we're an investment banking and management consulting firm. And we really strictly serve the built environment, right? So we handle the needs and concerns and wishes of building products manufacturers, contractors, design firms, technology companies in this space, even investment firms that are operating in this space. So we kind of cover the full gamut. I specifically reside on the consulting side of the house. And so the day in the life of me is helping contractors really understand how to leverage technology, build out a reliable, resilient technology ecosystem. And I help technology companies, both startups and mature tech, understand how to navigate the market, maybe perhaps how to build a pilot program for a newer emerging capability or technology. So it's a fun space to be. In addition to the technology side, I talk quite a bit and help quite a bit around creating innovation in businesses. So that's a little bit about us, not to be overly salesy, but
Sure.
about us. Yeah.
Oh, of course. So let's talk a little bit about, choosing the right technology. So when you talk with construction companies, like, can you speak a little bit to, how do you approach it? Like, how do you start that conversation? And I'll kind of frame this is oftentimes, companies call us and it's some version of, we want to get better, or we want to get faster, or we like to save money. And, we try to have more specific goals of like, well, why do you want to save money compared to what? Like, what's your expectation? Where are you at? How much time do you spend compared to how much time do you think is the right amount of time to spend?
Yeah.
What level of risk do you assess, and how do you calculate risk? And all of a sudden the conversation gets real blurry and it's more uncomfortable in some cases. And so I'd love to hear kind of how do you kind of start that conversation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you're getting those questions. Here's the questions that I'll get from contractors and folks using technology is, hey, I want to use technology XYZ because my so-and-so system's not working so well, right? And so I love those questions, and it kind of puts a smile on my face because as contractors specifically, we like to solve problems for sure. And we really sort of think of our problems in more of a tangible, tactile sense. So usually what I have to do with contractors is say, okay, got it. You're looking for a specific technology. Why, right? Why do you need that technology? Well, the current one we have isn't working. Okay, why is it not working? Well, we're getting bad data, or it's cumbersome, or so you ask. There's this principle of asking the 5 whys to get like the really root source of the problem. And unless you ask, whys to that degree, you may not be actually solving the problem. You may not be actually healing the illness or treating the illness. You may be just treating a symptom, right? So one thing I'd like to say here is to our contractor friends, as you're looking to pursue technology, make sure that you truly understand what it is that you're solving for, because a lot of times contractors will adopt a really great viable technology over top of a really terrible process, or over top of a people issue. And so there's underlying mitigating factors to their problem that really isn't the technology. Maybe the technology is part of the solution, but technology is maybe not necessarily part of the problem, if you will. So I'm on a big push right now, a soapbox, if you will, to try to ask contractors to, instead of thinking about technology as the problem or technology as the topic, let's back up a step and think about innovation as the topic, or innovation as the opportunity. Because when you think about it from an innovation standpoint, you start approaching your problems not just with tech, but with people and process coupled with tech. And that's the right approach to solving most problems in contractors' businesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, looking at what you shared with me and previous conversations, we often talk about, like, we're trying to protect the team from this additional work, right? And what does that mean really? And it's funny because when you buy technology and when you select technology, it's never a silver bullet. I mean, I think, obviously as a software guy, we're going to tell you it is. We know it isn't, right? We know that it's going to take work. I mean, as a former cycling guy, I've seen all these guys going like, yeah, I'm struggling, so I'm going to spend extra $3,000 on a faster bike.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe it's the engine. And so how do you kind of have that conversation? Because new technology does require a certain amount of work. Maybe hitting pause and thinking about how you approach things, people changing the way they work and changing the way they even think about the work they do. How do you navigate that for a construction company? What's your advice?
Yeah, it's a good point. And there's a saying that says, if Henry Ford asked the consumer what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, right? So instead, he really dissected the problem differently and became more creative and innovative. But to your point, maybe more practically speaking, when a contractor is deciding that they need to move forward with some sort of technology initiative, one of the things I want to encourage them to do is try to remove as much cognitive bias as they have as possible. And the best way to do that is, one, to make sure that your initiatives are informed from the bottom up, because that's when you're solving real problems, when you're alleviating real pain. And the other thing I'd say is make sure that you are developing a list of actual functional requirements for the technology based on feedback from all of the folks in the company that are going to be engaging with that technology or have that particular problem that they're wrestling with. If you can do that, if you can take that structured way, what happens is you find that there may be other problems that you can solve in this initiative as well. There may be other opportunities to leverage the technology to be more valuable in standardizing maybe perhaps parts of the business. But also, that document you're creating, that requirements document you're creating, informed from the end user, essentially acts as your spec. It's your wish list for what you need the tech to be. So when you can do that, also, it keeps you from saying, my buddy's using platform so-and-so, and I think that's right for us. Maybe that's the case. But how about we back into it with a more data-driven approach, and that would be by building out those requirements. Then you go out to the market and you start assessing or grading different solutions based on your actual needs. So that would be kind of at a high level the process that I would encourage everyone to go through. And by the way, Fred, everyone knows this. The problem is we have a hard time finding the time and committing the resources to commit to the process, right?
Yeah.
We need an answer and we need to go now.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's kind of to your point, right? Before you can select, what software, you gotta, really know what you're really trying to solve, right?
Yeah,
And to your point, like getting to the source of what is the problem, and sometimes the problem is just behavior.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's that cognitive bias, right? But that's what we've always done it. Like we have this filter through which we look at the world, and that's the way it's supposed to be. The data needs to live into this antiquated accounting system, because that's what I'm comfortable with. Right?
right.
It's like, I always prefer like the old pajamas that were like, no, it's just comfortable,
Yeah.
but they got coffee stains, they're disgusting, but it's like, it's just comfortable, right? And then the other part is making sure, what are you willing to invest?
You bet.
And also, does it promote the things I want to promote? To your point, what's the problem? Is it collaboration? I think
Sure.
that's a core theme, at least what we hear, and it's part of the product positioning, obviously, for Red Team. Uh, but collaboration seems to be a huge theme, but
Absolutely.
also oftentimes feels like misunderstood theme. Like
Yes.
what is collaboration? Like I've seen some presentations of a technology platform where it's like, we're going to give you an edge on your competitor or on your subs or on your GC because our system will just give them what they need to hear. I was like, well, is that collaboration? To
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
collaboration is creating transparency, making sure we see the same data. And so this way there is no secret, which ultimately I think tends to work better, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And the point being, define what collaboration means for you,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Don't use these squishy, undefined terms.
Yeah.
Put some detail to it.
Right. And then the tech requirements, and it's funny, when people hear tech requirements, they think about what servers do I need? And I'm like, it's not
Yes.
servers. It's like, where's your team at? Like we have
Right.
companies that call us and they're still on Gmail and they don't even have a website and there's no one in the office on desktops doing any work. I'm like, something like Red Team might not be the right solution for you. You may need to go into just a mobile app to
Yes.
start gathering, and I think construction companies and tech companies have to create strong alignment in the conversation about, listen, we share the same goal. And oftentimes that's not what it feels like, because they feel like, well, sell me. And we're like, if we have to sell you, that's probably not the right solution. Let's understand what it does, and if it's the right fit, let's make it work for you. And
Fred,
it becomes a different dynamic, right?
I'm going to jump in here, Fred, because I got to give you some kudos here, okay? Because we've talked about, making sure that we understand the illness that we're solving for. We've talked about, making sure that we're approaching this through a requirements-based, end-user-based approach. You just hit the third leg of the stool that's absolutely necessary for successful adoption of technology, and that is making sure that you're looking at the technology provider more than a vendor, right? If you feel like you're being sold to, it might not be the right provider for you. If you feel like you're talking to someone that's being consultative with you, that wants to understand your business objectives, that wants to make sure that you know all the power of their platform to help you achieve those objectives,
Mm-hmm.
now you're talking about a technology partner, and that's where you want to play. That's where contractors want to be securing tech providers.
So, like obviously, one thing I always think about is, this whole comments out there that has been floating that construction companies are behind in technology and so forth, and often refer to the reality of the platforms that existed, right? And I'll go back about 13 years, like the financial crisis, right?
Sure.
And so June 2007, the iPhone comes to exist. The cloud becomes ubiquitous over the next 3 to 4 years, right? And until those two things converged, right, the idea of technology in the field was not that available, it was difficult.
Yeah.
Um, so we get into 2012, 2013, and the construction is coming out of this cycle. They're looking to thrive. Technology gets adopted. Now we just went through COVID, right? So a
Right.
whole shift in how we think about the world. Do you think that has had a big impact in how companies think about, the need for cloud technology, for example?
100%. So you're right. I mean, in over the last 10 years, things like scalability of the technology, the advent or growth of software as a service, has helped to create accessibility for tech to contractors. The improvements in connectivity, particularly in the field, which allows things like cloud computing, has also broken down barriers. And then what's funny is social norms, the expectation of workers to be able to use tech at work as easy as they use tech at the house, right? So those are things that over the last 10 years have really moved the needle. Now, what's interesting, as you say, with COVID, is we found that there were really kind of two camps as COVID was happening. The contractors that found out they had pretty dependable technology, that for the most part, their ecosystem did what they had hoped it would do in times like that. And then unfortunately, you found folks that found out that they were maybe holding it together with bubble gum and band-aids and didn't realize it. That maybe there was some manual process happening, picking up the phone and walking through a report that should be easily readable and accessible in a technology, for example.
Right.
We find out that actually we were doing more of that manual assistance to the technology than we should be. So, and what do you get from that? Well, the folks that had a good experience with their technology during COVID have a greater trust in it. So they're advancing their technology stack even further, right? Pushing the needle, moving the envelope. So you have that camp. The camp that had trouble with their technology, they're at a point where they understand the importance of it, and they're maybe at the fundamental stages of, okay, I need to get this right. So let's go through these methodical processes in a way that's going to build me resilience and dependency in my tech stack.
Yeah, no, I find this like super fascinating, obviously, being a tech guy. And one of the things that is really interesting to me in listening to this is we saw construction companies that had a competitive advantage, right? And clients we talked to, because they did not miss a beat, right?
Yeah.
They're like, hey, listen, the staff has to work from home because their kids can't go to school, right?
Yeah.
And as long as they have a laptop, they can work. If you were on a hosted platform in your office, you're pretty constrained.
Sure.
I had a really good friend of mine about 3 months ago had hit with a ransomware,
Yeah.
and it was a big issue, a very large company in construction, and had to fight this. And so we talked about the cloud, and he goes, "Well, how is it safer?" I was like, "Well, like for Red Team, right, it's backed with Amazon. I'm
Yeah.
pretty comfortable. Amazon's got a decent handle on cloud technology."
Right.
He's like, "Well, is it better?" And it was kind of shocking to me that there was kind of this question. I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
so you're asking me if the largest company on the planet of its kind
Yeah.
safer than a piece of hardware in your office?" Like, you
It's,
know,
it's it's at least just relative, right? So relatively speaking, a tech giant is likely going to have more safety protocols and parameters in place to deal with it than the two-person IT team inside of a construction company.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now, like thinking about choosing the right technology, right? I mean, I always think about construction companies in like multi-dimensional businesses. Right? You've got the pre-con team, you have the project team in the office, you have the project team in the field, you
Sure.
have the financial team, you've got the executive team, and everybody has a very different view of what they need to know.
Yeah.
And then you've got your subcontractors, and you've got the owner, and then you've got the bonding company. I mean, everybody's got a point of view that they have on this project, and they're all tugging to say, I want it my way. So how do you prioritize? And the reason why I ask this is one of the things that we're starting to see as far as a shift in the conversation we've had over the past, let's say, 5 years,
Yeah.
is 5 years ago, there was very little conversation where the accounting team was not at the center of the conversation.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing that center of that conversation shifting more towards the project management team in the office saying, we're the ones building this stuff and we're going to tug the cover away because you need a good scorecard on the financials.
Yeah.
Where the work happens is here. And then you've got the field team saying, well, actually, it's here.
Yeah.
and so how do you help, consolidate that conversation and even also expose that conversation? Because I
Yeah.
think people try to oversimplify it, but in reality, it's actually pretty complicated.
It can be very complicated, especially when you're talking about project stakeholders that aren't under the same legal entity, right? The bonding agent versus the contractor versus the trade contractor or the owner, et cetera, right? I would hope that the building products manufacturers, suppliers, distributors would also be a part of it, but they're not quite there yet. But I think what you're saying is true, and we're seeing it, that project stakeholders today, in part due to technology, have closer access to projects at the tactical level than they've ever had before. So as this information becomes more and more available, the risk is, the threat is misinterpretation, right? So a lot of this has to do with analysis and understanding of what the data is saying. So when you're talking about all these different stakeholders that may or may not be under the same, business umbrella, we need to be mindful of creating conditions, creating environments where they can see the information that they're interested in. They're seeing it in a way that's digestible and consumable to them, interpreted in a way for them. And then also allows that sort of layer of the collaboration you were talking about, right? I'm seeing this happening over here on, let's say, my dashboard as a very simple example. I think this means this to me. What can you tell me? What more can you tell me about that? That collaboration platform for that conversation to occur, let's say between or across dashboards in this case, is still in its infancy, right? But a very interesting opportunity in front of us to make that happen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, and even speaking about this, one of the things we do, like in discovery conversation, obviously we try to elevate a problem to the surface, saying, okay, is this a problem or not? One of the most prevalent accepted problem, that I'd call it, is the time GC spend on managing subcontractor relationships, subcontractor billing.
Sure.
Like the cost of an invoice for a GC. If I told them what I think the cost of their invoice, they always tell me I'm nuts, so I never say it. But I ask them questions. I go, how many AP clerks do you have? How many invoices per month do you manage? How much time does your project manager spend on it? And then I was like, okay, so let's just calculate it. And typically the number ends up about the same, like somewhere between 80 to 120 bucks per invoice is more or less where we land.
Yeah.
And those become pretty shocking, and it becomes a problem they didn't know they had.
Yes.
Right. And so is that a big part of the work you do with FMI when you talk with your customers, to force them to ask questions, like, and shine a light in a blind spot they didn't know they had maybe?
Yes, absolutely. And those questions you just asked them about progress payments and invoicing, those are the right questions, right? So, when I'm with a client, I'm not sitting with a client talking about the technology. I'm talking about the use case. I'm talking about the process. I'm talking about where there may be chinks in the armor, if you will. As another example, just to throw it out there, post-occupancy warranty callbacks. There's a tremendous amount of lost revenue, unrecoverable revenue, post-occupancy, post-turnover to the owner, that contractors don't have a lot of visibility over. Let's have that conversation. And then, as a part of getting a better handle on that, there's certainly going to be opportunities that we should look at for layering in technology to help us be more deliberate in how we're managing post-occupancy callbacks. Just as another example, along with your invoicing example. So those are the conversations we have with clients. It's absolutely right.
It's amazing. And so, I mean, you see companies, and I'm sure some of them you walk in, you go, wow, like they really have their act together. And some of them you look, I don't understand how they make it. Like, what would you say were one or two traits that you find in successful construction companies are pretty consistent?
Yeah.
Like, is there a couple of things that jump out?
Yeah, so there's a consistency across all construction companies that are surviving, right? Let's just put it that way, and that is grit. Grit and passion, maybe. That's why I love this industry. I grew up in the builder side. I love the grit and the passion of everyone that's in this business, whether they own the company, they're leading an aspect of the company, or they're getting work done in the field. There are a couple of things that I think are probably common to the best of the best, right? So one of the things that I'd say that executives or leadership in a company need to make sure they do is find time to pull themselves out of the minutia of the business so that they can kind of work on the business, right? You've heard this phrase of you're spending too much time in the business and not enough time working on the business. That is a fact. That is something that is very easy to not keep control over, not get a handle on. Especially as most of these construction companies are sole proprietorships, family-owned business. pull yourself above daily operations to work on the business. That would be what I'd say is one key component. The other key component is when we're talking about things like technology, let's make this relevant to our conversation. You need to start thinking differently about what you would traditionally consider a cost center, right? Or an expense. So you have to realize that even though we're still in the early days of being able to effectively show ROI, and there's reasons for that, right? The variability, project to project, the uncontrollable factors of construction, but because that makes it difficult for ROI, that doesn't mean that we should consider resources like technology as a cost center. That would be like considering the bulldozer on site as a cost center. No, that bulldozer's making you money, right? That you are producing revenue because you have that. In a similar fashion, I'll point to your example. And in a similar fashion, technology is making you money if you can improve how you invoice, if you can improve the time value of money by reducing the time to get paid, right? That's no longer a cost center. That's an actual revenue producing part of the business in a way. So if we can start looking at technology that way more commonly in construction companies, those are kind of recipes to, really starting to achieve, best in breed performance in the business.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, right? Because you think about construction companies, and it's oftentimes the conversation we hear is, well, it's a lot of money to spend. And I was like, well, if you think you're spending money with Red Team, you shouldn't buy it.
Right.
Like you should be investing money, and you should be focusing on what is it worth to you, and that goes back to that conversation about what is the intention, right? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Like we had the case recently of one of our clients who put in place a subcontractor collaboration platform, and there was one of the person on the team, on the AP clerk, that felt like her job was at risk. She's like, well, there's
Yes.
a lot less to do. I don't have to print 30 sheets of paper and deliver to this box, and I don't. So what am I going to do, right? And it was really interesting because what shifted the conversation is that the leadership of the company was in the room, and as she was asking questions, and you could hear the question was, well, what about my job? That was a real
Right.
question that was asked. And so one of them jumped in and said, no, there's all this work that we have to do that we're not really doing. We're not actually really auditing deeply enough into change orders. We're not auditing deeply enough or billing. And so we're leaving thousands of dollars on the table every day by not doing that work. And so the ROI became, how do I take that time that I saved and apply it to something more productive?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and now it could be like, for her, it was like scenario where they talked about doing audit, but with another client where it was, we're going to apply time to create more of a review of projects that we can share with prospects. Say, hey, how did we do? Right?
Yeah.
This was the net cost to budget and the times, and all of a sudden they can prove why they're good at what they do. And I think construction companies sometimes feel like they may lose sight of that's where the value gets created. It's not just a save time. It's $50 an hour, so I save $50 if I save an hour. I was like,
Right.
no, you should be looking at what do I do with that hour and what value do I create for the business.
You bet. I think, I love working with technology companies that help contractors to take care of mundane tasks or low value tasks, right? Just like you're saying, the idea that we look at it as, well, wow, that's great. We can save a couple of bucks because we've automated this or whatever. It's kind of missing a big part of the point, right? I mean, that individual's work can now focus on the high quality, high value aspects of what they do. Where maybe they haven't been giving it enough attention as they should because of the risk of doing that part of their job wrong, right? So if we can shift their attention to those more high value tasks to create higher quality work in their role, they're not actually at risk of losing their job. In my opinion, we've actually made them even more valuable in their role, right?
That's right.
I can hire anybody to process and push papers, but if I need someone to, let's say, analyze a bid, analyze an estimate, analyze cash flow schedules, that's high value work, right? I can't hire anyone off the street to do that. I can hire anyone off the street to take a paper and put it from this desk to that desk.
Right.
So this is a really good point.
Yeah, no, it's really funny. And going back to the point earlier, I know we're getting close to our 30-minute mark. we had, we see customers that we talk to, again, we talk to thousands of customers every year. And one of them, we had this conversation around the process of vendor invoice. And I talk about this a lot because I just feel like it's one of those low value tasks.
Right.
It feels like you're just burning bandwidth and burning money of processing invoices to me, like when I talk about it. And so the way the process works with the subcontractor collaboration platform is the invoice gets routed directly to the project manager. And then
Sure.
the accountant jumped in and goes, no, it needs to come to me first. And so I asked the question, I go, what do you do? And she's like, well, I receive it first. I go, I understand, but what do you do when you receive it? Like, I want to understand what's the next step. And it was a friendly, it was not confrontational.
Sure.
And she
Sure.
goes, well, I review it and then I forward it. And she stops. She goes, oh, yeah, I sent it to the project manager. Got it.
Ding,
And,
ding,
and
ding.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was like, so now there's that, 20, 30 minutes and there's a delay, right? All that effort that happens that created zero value. And
Yes.
and one of the biggest challenges that they had is they had subs billing outside the schedule of value, billing for change orders that had not been approved internally, and all of that process. And I was like, what if you could put like a tighter net around this thing
Yeah.
and really constrain your sub to bill you only within the constraints of the subcontract agreement you have that's in place, and force the conversation to adjust that agreement if they want to bill you for it. Would
Well,
that help?
Fred, what you're describing is exactly what my opening point is that what you're describing is they innovated their company by looking at the process and then realized that they can create this stickiness to that new workflow with technology, right? So this is where I would go back to contractors to say, look, continuous process improvement, reducing waste, reducing variability, that's what you need to focus on. And of course, when you can layer in a technology with a standard workflow that allows us to create habits, right? Healthy habits and behaviors, that's a win. That is how you improve the business.
Cool. So we're at the half hour. So how do people get in touch with you if they want someone to dig into their business and help them figure this stuff out?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Look, I'm active on LinkedIn. Hopefully, you can the folks can consume my content there. Jay Snyder. Of course, they can get a hold of me by email, jsnyder@fminet.com. Smoke signals, whatever they want. But,
Well, you're not hard to find. You're like a famous guy in
I
construction.
try not to be hard to find.
Yeah.
I try not to be hard to find. And then, what they need to know about FMI and FMI's culture is we want to have the conversation. It doesn't matter whether there's an opportunity for us to actually engage in a formal project together or not.
Right.
A rising tide raises all boats, right? So if
Right.
we can keep the conversation going like you and I always do,
Sure.
it's for the betterment of everybody.
Right. And then as a matter of disclosure for every listening, Jay's not getting paid. I'm not getting paid to do this. As a matter of fact, oftentimes Jay has been on the side of reviewing Red Team for a customer, and I don't know it. And it's good because after the fact, he tells me, hey, this is what you did well. This is what you didn't do well. This is where you went. And it's really valuable for us to have that conversation. But I think that's actually what moves improvement forward, is how do we get to a real conversation and get away from, well, am I going to buy this? It's more, okay, I'm not going to buy this product. I'm going to tell them why. I'm going to actually, and if you can't say why you're not choosing a certain technology, it means you have a really good understanding of where you are and what you want it to do, which is healthy for your business, right? So as a construction company, try to think about it in that lens of, really let's make really investment decisions and non-investment decision, and sometimes try to share with your technology partners or potential partners, and this is why we made the call. It's never personal, frankly. For us, it helps us, and I think it helps us help others. And so there's a lot of value in terms of creating that cycle of information.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think that most of the people in the industry that are succeeding are people that genuinely want feedback, genuinely want to be a part of the conversation to kind of move things forward. I've run across very few sleazy companies or sleazy people. I think that for the most part, this is an honest, hardworking industry, and everyone sort of is pushing in the same direction. So the feedback should be open and honest and plentiful. And then Fred, I've enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed working with the Red Team. I've enjoyed working with your clients before they became clients. And certainly for FMI, we like to maintain the role of being sort of the disinterested third party so that we can provide some pure advisory services to both contractors and technology companies.
That's awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be
I'll
here.
let you roll on for the rest of your day. I know it's 5 o'clock here,
Sure.
but it means we probably have more work to do, right?
There's more work to do. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Fred. I appreciate it. Always enjoy it.
You got it. All right. Take care, Jay. Thank you so much.
See you.
All right.